Do you ever feel like you're doing everything right, eating well, staying active, but you still just feel off? You know, that bone-deep fatigue you can't shake no matter how much you sleep? Or that crazy thirst that you just write off as being dehydrated? What if these aren't just random quirks, but are actually clues to a serious condition that even your doctor might be missing? It's a wild thought, but millions of people are walking around with undiagnosed diabetes. And it's not because the signs aren't there, it's because the medical system itself, the very system we trust with our health, can sometimes be set up to overlook the most important clues, especially in adults. The consequences of a missed diagnosis are no joke. We're talking about everything from years of feeling unwell to life-threatening emergencies. So in this video, we're going to expose the 5 critical medical reasons why a diabetes diagnosis gets overlooked. And more importantly, we're going to give you the playbook to take control of your health, ask the right questions, and get the right diagnosis before it's too late. If you've ever felt like something's wrong, but you can't quite put your finger on it, you're going to want to stick around. This might just be the most important video you watch all year. 1. Vague and overlapping symptoms. All right, the first and most common reason a diabetes diagnosis gets missed is that its early symptoms are masters of disguise. Think about it. Feeling tired, being thirsty, peeing more often, maybe some blurry vision. Taken one by one, any of these can be easily explained away. Long week at work? Of course you're tired. Didn't hit your water goal today? That explains the thirst. These symptoms aren't just vague. They overlap with dozens of other, less serious conditions. A doctor hears fatigue, and their mind might jump to stress, a vitamin deficiency, or just bad sleep. They hear frequent urination, and they might think it's a UTI, especially in women. The problem is, these seemingly small complaints are the classic calling cards of a body struggling to manage its blood sugar. Here's what's happening. When your blood sugar is high, your kidneys go into overdrive trying to filter it all out. When they can't keep up, that extra sugar gets dumped into your urine, and it drags a bunch of fluid along with it. This is why you have to pee all the time, which in turn leaves you dehydrated and constantly thirsty. And the fatigue? That's from your body's cells literally being starved of energy, because they can't use the sugar that's just floating uselessly in your bloodstream. This confusion doesn't just happen between diabetes and other conditions, it can also happen between the different types of diabetes. Both type 1 and type 2 can show up with these exact same symptoms, making it tough for a doctor to know what they're dealing with from symptoms alone. This often leads to a watch and wait approach, where precious time is lost while your health quietly gets worse. The real danger is that while you're being told to just get more rest, your body could be taking a beating from the damaging effects of high blood sugar. The second reason, the age expectation bias. The second major reason for a misdiagnosis is a deeply ingrained and frankly outdated bias in the medical world. The idea that type 1 diabetes is for kids and type 2 is for adults. This is easily one of the most dangerous myths in modern medicine. For decades, the textbook rule was simple. If a kid or a teen has diabetes symptoms, it's type 1, an autoimmune disease. If an adult over 40 shows up with symptoms, it's automatically assumed to be type 2, which is tied to insulin resistance. But the reality is completely different. We now know that a huge number of people diagnosed with type 1 diabetes are adults. Some studies suggest that figure could be nearly half of all new cases. Research has shown that a shocking number of these adults, somewhere between 1/3 and 40%, are first told they have type 2 diabetes. Think about that. Up to 4 out of 10 adults with an autoimmune disease are being told they have a lifestyle-related condition. This isn't just a simple mix-up. It has life-or-death stakes. Someone with type 1 diabetes needs insulin to live, period. If they're misdiagnosed with type 2, they might be sent home with a diet plan and oral meds that do absolutely nothing for them. This delay can lead to a terrifying complication called diabetic ketoacidosis, or DKA, where the blood turns acidic. DKA is a full-blown medical emergency that can cause organ failure, a coma, and can even be fatal. This critical failure stems directly from a bias about age that just won't go away, even with a mountain of evidence showing it's wrong. Section 3. Reason number 3, unreliable physical profiling. The third reason is something I call unreliable physical profiling. This is what happens when a diagnosis is based more on what a patient looks like, specifically their weight and BMI, than on their actual symptoms. The classic stereotype of a type 2 patient is someone who is overweight. And while extra weight is a major risk factor for type 2, it is not a diagnosis. This stereotype creates a huge blind spot. A doctor might see a patient who is thin or has a normal BMI and just rule out type 2 diabetes without a second thought, even if all the signs are there. The American Diabetes Association actually recommends that screening should start for all adults at age 35, no matter their weight, because the risk goes up for everyone as we get older. Even more dangerously, this focus on weight is a huge reason adult-onset type 1 gets misdiagnosed. When an adult who happens to be overweight develops type 1, their condition is almost automatically labeled as type 2. The doctor sees the weight, it fits the profile, and the investigation just stops. But people of all shapes and sizes get type 1 diabetes at any age. Things get even muddier with something called metabolic syndrome, a group of conditions like high blood pressure, high blood sugar, and extra belly fat. While it's a strong predictor for type 2, it's also becoming more common in the general population and can even show up in someone with type 1. Relying on physical traits like BMI to make a diagnosis is a shortcut that can send doctors down the completely wrong path, leaving a patient with the wrong diagnosis and a useless treatment plan. Section 4. Reason number 4. The underuse of definitive tests. This brings us to the fourth, and maybe the most frustrating reason, not using the simple definitive blood tests that can easily tell the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Initial tests like an A1C or fasting glucose check are great for seeing if blood sugar is high, but they can't tell you why. They don't know if it's an autoimmune issue or an insulin resistance issue. To figure that out, you need two key tests, an antibody test and a C-peptide test. The antibody test is the smoking gun for type 1. It looks for the specific autoantibodies the immune system creates to attack its own insulin-making cells in the pancreas. If these antibodies are there, it's a huge sign that you're looking at type 1 diabetes. The C-peptide test is just as important. When the pancreas makes insulin, it also releases a protein called C-peptide in equal amounts. Measuring C-peptide shows you exactly how much insulin your own body is producing. A very low or non-existent C-peptide level means the pancreas isn't making enough insulin, a hallmark of type 1. A normal or even high level suggests the body is making plenty of insulin but can't use it right, which is classic type 2. So why on earth aren't these tests ordered for every adult with a new diabetes diagnosis? It usually comes back to the biases we just talked about. If a doctor has already decided a patient fits the type 2 profile, they may not think these extra tests are necessary. This is a massive mistake. Failing to use these simple diagnostic tools is a primary reason for misdiagnosis. In fact, studies show that half of the people who are misdiagnosed are still being treated for the wrong type of diabetes more than a decade later. That means years of bad blood sugar control and a much higher risk of devastating long-term complications. Section 5. Reason number 5. Systemic and laboratory errors. The final reason has less to do with individual decisions and more to do with the system itself. This includes something called prevalence bias and the simple fact that lab errors can happen. Prevalence bias is a statistical trap. Because type 2 diabetes makes up about 90 to 95% of all diabetes cases in adults, doctors are conditioned to see it as the most likely diagnosis by default. It's the statistical favorite, so the underdog, adult-onset type 1, often gets ignored just because it's less common. The system is basically wired to see type 2 first, and it takes a really proactive doctor to look past the odds. On top of that bias, there can be actual technical errors with the lab tests. The A1C test, which gives a 3-month average of your blood sugar, is a key tool for diagnosis. But its accuracy can be thrown off by certain things. For instance, people of African, Mediterranean, or Southeast Asian descent are more likely to have a hemoglobin variant, a totally harmless difference in their blood protein, that can mess with the A1C test and give a falsely high or low number. This could cause a diagnosis to be missed entirely. While these errors aren't super common, they're a reminder that no single test is foolproof. A diagnosis should always be based on the whole picture: your symptoms, your history, a physical exam, and, when it's necessary, more than one type of test to confirm what's really going on. Practical tips to protect yourself. Okay, hearing all this might be a little unsettling, but the goal isn't to scare you, it's to empower you. You are the CEO of your own health. So what can you actually do? First, if you have any of the symptoms we talked about, that constant thirst, peeing all the time, unexplained fatigue, blurry vision, don't brush them off. Bring them up to your doctor and be specific. Second, if you're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, especially if you're at a healthy weight or the treatment just isn't working, ask your doctor directly. Is there any chance this could be adult onset type 1? Then ask about getting a GAD antibody test and a C-peptide test to be sure. A big red flag is if you're told you have type 2 but need to start insulin within the first 3 years. That's a strong sign it might have been misdiagnosed type 1 all along. And third, play the long game with prevention, especially for type 2, which can often be delayed or prevented. Simple lifestyle changes have been shown to slash the risk of developing diabetes. This means keeping a healthy weight, eating a diet full of fiber and low in processed junk, and getting at least 150 minutes of moderate exercise, like a brisk walk, every week. In conclusion, getting to the right diagnosis can be a fight, but it's a fight worth having. Understanding these 5 reasons, the vague symptoms, the age bias, the physical profiling, the underused tests, and the system errors, gives you the power to be an active partner in your own health care. If this video was helpful, please share it with someone you care about. You never know who needs to hear this, and for more content that helps you take charge of your health, make sure to subscribe. Don't ever be afraid to question a diagnosis or ask for the tests you need. Getting it right is the first and most important step to living a long, healthy life. Medicine has incredible tools to manage diabetes, but they only work if they're used for the right condition. Be persistent, be informed, and be your own best advocate.